We're going to discuss the Americans we share a country with. We're going to talk to Scott Presler about the GOP ground game, what he's got going on, climate insanity, did Joe Biden have a medical emergency, all that and more coming up on I'm Right. I want you to do something with me really quickly as we get into our show tonight on I'm Right. Just stay with me here, and I want you to be honest with yourself. You don't have to email me your answers or anything like that. Just be honest with yourself. When I say the word communist, who do you picture? There's an image that pops up into your head. Don't think about it. What is that image? So for most people, understandably, for me, for maybe you, when I say the word communist, what do I picture? I picture maybe a uniformed NKVD agent in the Soviet Union. Open up, you're going to the gulag, pounding on your door in the middle of the night. That's what I picture. I picture Lenin. I picture one of Mao's Red Guards terrorizing little old ladies, dragging them out of their homes. These are the images that go into my head when I think of communism. I think of black pajamas. You know, the communists in Cambodia, when Pol Pot took over there and proceeded to exterminate 25% of his country, they wanted everyone to look the same. Of course, everyone has to be the same. That's why they eliminate all beauty and everything, really. They would take people's clothes and they would dye all of them. They would dye everyone's clothes, so everyone was dressed in all black and the same. Like, these are the images that pop into my head when I say the word communist. These are the people that pop into my head. But I'm shortchanging myself, and that means my mentality isn't totally where it needs to be. Because the truth is, we are surrounded by them here in the United States of America. We are. And until you accept that, maybe I haven't fully accepted that, but until we fully accept that's who we're surrounded by, we can never, ever, ever win. We are not up against Democrats. We're not up against liberals or progressives. We're up against the exact kind of people I just mentioned in the open. We don't like to think of them in that way. This reporter, our liberal Aunt Peggy, your Democrat friend. We don't like to picture them in that way because it changes how we view the world. We don't like to picture them as the NKVD agent. Open up off to the gulag. We don't like to picture that. We don't like to picture them beating people to death with sticks and hammers in Cambodia. We don't like that. It's too much to fathom. We're not surrounded by people like that. But we are. We really genuinely are. That's what these people believe. They have some kind of sick, demonic religion inside of them. And they believe there are good guys, that's them. There are bad guys, that's you. Anyone who isn't part of them is a bad guy. And because they're the good guys in their minds, they believe they can and should do anything to the bad guys. Anything you want to do to the bad guys is permissible. After all, you're the good guy in this whole thing. Remember the polls that came out during COVID? Remember the percentage of American Democrats who wanted your children taken away from you if you weren't vaccinated? Remember the percentage of American Democrats who wanted you locked in a quarantine camp if you didn't get your booster shot? You're not surrounded by Democrats. You're surrounded by communists who think the exact same way Lenin thought, Pol Pot thought, Mao thought. They think the exact same way. I want you to watch something. I want you to watch an exchange here. This reporter, he's with the Washington Post. I really want you to take this in, and I want you to realize these are the people you and I share a country with.
Elon Musk is slated to interview Donald Trump tonight on X. I don't know if the president is going to tune in. Feel free to say if he is or not. But I think that misinformation on Twitter is not just a campaign issue. It's a America issue. What role does the White House or the president have in sort of stopping that, or stopping the spread of that, or sort of intervening in that? Some of that was about campaign misinformation, but it's a wider thing, right?
What? What role does the White House have in stopping that? That interview took place last night. Elon Musk interviewed Trump. It was a long thing, but tons of people have watched it by now. But setting that aside, you heard that Trump was going to be interviewed by Elon Musk on Twitter. Maybe that made you happy. Maybe it made you mad. Maybe you listened. Maybe you didn't. But it never once occurred to you that the government should step in and stop a private citizen from interviewing the man running for president. But to a communist, it would never occur to him that the government shouldn't do that. Well, of course the government should step in and stop any speech I don't like or any speech I disagree with. Of course, and that's just how these people think. They can't help themselves. They're all vile, filthy little tyrannical tyrants. They're horrible little communists, and we share a country with these people. Oh, and listen to Corinne Diversity Hire's response to this guy.
You've heard us talk about this many times from here, about the responsibilities that social media platforms have when it comes to misinformation, disinformation. Don't have anything to read out from here about specific ways that we're working on it, but we believe that they have the responsibility. These are private companies, so we're also mindful of that too.
Yeah, mindful of that. So mindful of that the communists in the White House have bragged before on camera about coordinating with these private companies to, of course, silence the bad guys.
In terms of actions, Alex, that we have taken, or we're working to take, I should say, from the federal government, we've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation.
Excuse me? We're tracking? You're tracking who? Communists? We're flagging problematic posts? The White House openly admits they'll flag your post if they don't like the information you are sharing? Please stop the act. Stop this world of make-believe you live in that we have Democrats in this country. Democrats are gone. We have communists in this country. And if you want to know how this ends, well, do remember the interview I did with Tommy Robinson, the man who's already been to prison for being a reporter in England and a man who's about to go back.
They have to control what you say. I know I look at America as having freedom of speech. Do you really have it? If YouTube, if Facebook, if Instagram, if all these platforms, TikTok, they're under their control. You only get a certain narrative. You get pumped a certain idea. Did you get real free speech with COVID, with all these different things? Or did you get lied to?
Listen to what they're doing in England.
The offence of incitement to racial hatred involves publishing or distributing material which is insulting or abusive, which is intended to or likely to start racial hatred. So if you retweet that, then you're republishing that, and then potentially you're committing that offence. And we do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media. Their job is to look for this material and then follow up with identification arrests and so forth. So it's a really, really serious. People might think they're not doing anything harmful. They are, and the consequences will be visited upon them.
They're bragging about who and what they are on camera. Of course, because they're the good guys. You're the bad guy. What can't the good guy do to the bad guy? He is officially given his own conscience a license to do whatever he wants to you. And do you see this police commissioner from over there?
We will throw the full force of the law at people. And whether you're in this country committing crimes on the streets or committing crimes from further afield online, we will come after you. Being a keyboard warrior does not make you safe from the law. You can be guilty of offences of of incitement, of stirring up racial hatred. There are numerous terrorist offences regarding the sort of publishing of material. All of those offences are in play if people are provoking hatred and violence on the streets, and we'll come after those individuals just as we will physically confront on the streets the thugs and the obs who are causing the problems for communities.
Treating angry citizens as if they're terrorists. Just thank goodness that kind of thing can't happen here. Oh, except it already did. Do remember that when you got angry at your school for closing down, the COVID masks, the whole white people suck ridiculousness that is taught in schools, and when you started showing up at your school board getting loud, making things uncomfortable for the communists, the FBI promptly convened its counterterrorism division to decide which terrorist threat label to put on you. We do not have Democrats. We don't have liberals. We don't have progressives. We have communists. Understand that and prepare accordingly. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. And we are trying to defeat those communists this November. Scott Presler has been on the ground working his butt off to do just that. Let's talk to Scott next about the view from the ground. How is the GOP ground game? How are things looking? I don't know. Scott does. Before we talk to Scott, let's talk about waking up in the morning. Really sets the tone for your whole day, doesn't it? When those eyes flutter open, you know right away, oh, crap. That was a bad night's sleep. I'm still tired. Day's going to suck. Work's going to suck, you know. Or, oh, I slept so good. I am ready to go. It's going to be a great day. Right away. Sets the tone for the day. Why don't you set the tone for the day with some dream powder from Beam the night before? It's a delicious cup of hot chocolate. I have a cup of cinnamon hot chocolate at night. And then I just drift off to sleep. And it's drug-free, but it puts me to sleep, and I wake up ready to go every single day. 40% off. Shopbeam.com/Jesse Kelly. We'll be back. Let's talk about the election. Let's talk about the nitty-gritty ground game stuff of the election. Putting in the work is what matters now. You know, there's nothing wrong with wearing a Trump hat and going to a rally, woo, post it on Twitter, but that's not winning elections. That's not putting in the work. Scott Presler's in Pennsylvania right now putting in the work. Let's find out how that work is going. Scott, obviously, it's not exactly news to you. We really need to win Pennsylvania. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, it's very likely he gets another term in the White House. What's the status in Pennsylvania?
Thanks, Jesse. It's always been about PA. And so a lot has changed since we last spoke. And I'm glad to tell you that my organization, Early Vote Action, we have hired a state director for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we have 12 additional field staff. Our donations are not going to brick and mortar. They're not going to advertising. Everything is going to direct, face-to-face, boots on the ground, voter contact. And one thing that I just announced that we're doing today is we are reaching out to every FFL company or business in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's federal firearms license. And so we're reaching out to gun stores, making sure that every single one of them is going to be carrying voter registration forms. We're going to the farmers markets. We're going to every single fair across Pennsylvania. We are meeting voters where they are, face to face.
How about that? That is how the work gets done. Okay, Scott, so the bad news, I'm still looking at a 350,000 vote advantage for the commies in Pennsylvania. Should I be intimidated by that number? Are we going to overcome that number? That's an intimidating number to me.
Well, let's put things into context because you bring up a great point. Some people may look at the fact that, yes, while Democrats have an advantage of 360,000 more registered Ds than ours right now, let's bring that back to 2016 when President Trump won the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That number was over 900,000 more registered Ds than ours when Donald Trump even won. And 2 years ago, That number was 595. So we are seeing the rapid decline of registered Democrat voters in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And furthermore, we just flipped, Jesse, Bucks County from blue to red. That county voted for Hillary Clinton, voted for Joe Biden, and 4 years ago had 15,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans. Today, right now, there are more than 500 registered Republicans. So that's a shift of 15,500 in just 4 years in a state that was decided by 80,000 votes in 2020. So Jesse, Pennsylvania is trending to the right.
How about that? I like that, Scott. All right. Now, I like that you're going into gun stores. That's friggin' brilliant, by the way. Tell me about churches, Scott. I have been very, very hard on the American church for its reluctance to get involved politically. Are you seeing any kind of a ramp up there? Is that an effort that we can make, that we should make? What's the church involvement?
Well, first, because you mentioned the gun stores, I would be remiss not to acknowledge that 30% of Pennsylvania hunters are not registered to vote. And there are 930,000 hunters in Pennsylvania. So that's why my focus is so directed towards the gun enthusiast community, because if we register them to vote, we win. Now, Jesse, you make a great point that 30% of Christians are not registered to vote. And in fact, on the 24th of this month, I had a reverend reach out to me in Lackawanna. Lackawanna is a very important Northeast Pennsylvania area of the state right next to Luzerne. And in fact, the reverend said, I want to engage my community. I want to get them registered. Can you send a representative? And so a member of our team will be registering voters at that reverend's church. And so I encourage everybody listening to the show right now, reach out to your pastor, your faith leader, and ask for permission to set up a nonpartisan, non-political voter registration table, before mass, after church, after synagogue, whatever. And let's engage people of faith and make sure that they have a plan to vote on Tuesday, November 5th for Donald Trump.
Oh. What are you seeing from the Democrat ground game there, Scott? I know that they're professionals here, and we're trying to catch up courtesy to you for that. But I know they're professionals. I know they've been doing this for a long time, and I know early voting starts soon. What are you seeing on the ground?
Well, let's talk about the data. We have seen a lot of quote unquote enthusiasm for Kamala and the Democrats, since they pushed Biden aside undemocratically and installed Kamala as the presumptive nominee. And everybody thought there was going to be this bump, there was this surge. We're not seeing it in regards to data. In the last 3 weeks, when Kamala was installed, you would think they would have a net gain, but no. Republicans for all last 3 weeks have maintained a net gain across the 67 counties in Pennsylvania. The only place that Democrats have really seen a gain of voters is in Southeast outside of Philadelphia. Now, here's the interesting thing. Remember how I told you that we'd flipped Bucks County from blue to red? Bucks County is the only collar county that has actually not seen a net gain for Democrats, and in fact has continued to trend to the right. And I'll tell you from my personal experience, Jesse, being out at fairs like the Butler County Fair, like the Wayne County Fair, sure, the Democrats have a booth and they have a presence, but they are low energy. They are not engaging with voters. And quite frankly, I say this respectfully, our voter booths have had a lot of engagement, enthusiasm, and I have seen a dearth of people at their booths.
Scott, I'm going to ask you a personal question, and I want you to be totally honest with me. What's
Yes.
the best thing you've eaten at one of those fairs in Pennsylvania?
I am watching my figure. I've been getting a little thick recently, but I will tell you, I had some taffy from one of the fairs recently, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. No, I used to like taffy too, but now I'm old and I feel like it gets caught in my teeth too much. Okay, Scott, if people want to help you get out the vote in the state we have to win, the state that can return Trump to the White House? How can they do that?
Please, I need your financial help. Go to earlyvoteaction.com. That's earlyvoteaction.com. I promise you that your donations that you donate today are going to go directly to hiring more boots on the ground. We have 13 staffers. These aren't RNC, these aren't GOP, these are Scott Presler, Early Vote Action staffers. And if you want me to hire more people, please contribute financially today. earlyvoteaction.com.
Earlyvoteaction.com, people. Don't tell me you want it. Show me. Scott, thank you, brother. All right. These filthy climate commies are trying to wreck Pennsylvania by banning fracking. In fact, they're doing a lot of things, and Republicans aren't doing much to push back. Mark Morano, our guy who shoots down all the climate commie garbage, he joins us next to discuss it. Before he joins us, let's talk about this. Money savings. All the stories are out today, all this new financial data. People are getting buried. People are cutting costs or canceling vacation plans. They're getting buried. You know, there's an easy way you can save some money. It's really easy. Switch your cell phone to Pure Talk. You don't need Verizon. You don't need AT&T. You don't need T-Mobile. Pure Talk is on the exact same 5G network. You don't need those companies. Pure Talk not only shares and promotes your values. We had 4 phone lines. We had T-Mobile before I discovered Pure Talk. We had 4 phone lines. We switched to Pure Talk, and my bill got cut in half. Clean cut in half. That's significant money savings. Put some more money in your pocket right now. We all need it. Go to puretalk.com/JesseTV and switch. We'll be back.
Because my views are actually pretty, I think, moderate in this regard, which is that I don't think we should vilify the oil and gas industry and the people that have worked very hard in those industries to provide the necessary energy to support the economy. And if we were to stop using oil and gas right now, we would all be starving and the economy would collapse.
He is an interesting cat. I still am not totally sure what I make of him, but he is an interesting cat. Joining me now, Mark Morano, executive editor of ClimateDepot.com. Mark, this guy makes rockets. He makes electric cars. He's an Obama voter. Now he's supporting Trump. I don't know what to make of Elon Musk. What's the Mark Morano impression?
Good question. It's complicated. First off, Elon Musk was red-pilled by COVID, the COVID-19 lockdowns. And he joins many people, from the former leftists and progressive like Jimmy Dore, people like Naomi Wolf, Russell Brand, and many others along those lines. And it's been an amazing transformation. So generally, I welcome these former progressive liberals into this new sort of against the uniparty in Washington. That's a good development. But I've followed Elon Musk for 15 years, back to when he first got his Tesla up and rolling, and I was working in the U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. And the thing to understand is his business model depends on climate alarmism and Green New Deal style policies. I'll even rephrase that, has depended upon that. So you can go back 10 years, he has made outrageously alarmist comments, tipping point comments. Elon Musk was right in there with the best of them, say 2010, 12, 15. And then he did sort of moderate it a little, but then with COVID, he sort of reevaluated the whole climate. Right now, what he said, what's amazing here, Jesse, is we're analyzing what he said, and what he said makes perfect sense to anyone who understands anything. You don't even have to understand engineering, energy, science. You just have to understand common sense. But that's radical for a purveyor of electric vehicles to say what he said about energy. So I give him full kudos. I don't fully trust him. I think he's doing a great job with free speech on Twitter. And I think he's got so many government contracts, though, that he can never fully go against the establishment, because whether it's Neuralink or his space station or his Tesla, he relies on the government, on the uniparty, on the establishment, or he's not going to be the world's wealthiest man for long.
No, he's not. You know what they did talk a little bit about last night was the cost of all this green, which is just climate commie garbage, of all this green stuff. The costs, not just in the future, the costs we've already had from all this stuff. Can you expand on just how expensive this insanity has been for the American people, well, for the world, really?
Yeah, I mean, really, you got to go back to 1992. George H.W. Bush in September of 92 was told he could go down to the Rio Earth Summit by the United Nations and look green while he was battling Bill Clinton for president in 92. He went down there and signed the United States onto the United Nations Biodiversity, the Earth Treaty, and that set up the entire game globally. And the United States was committed. It gave us sustainable development, the UN agenda, Sustainable Development Agenda, now Agenda 2030. It gave us the entire United Nations Conference. I can't even remember the number off the top of my head, but it was like tens of trillions of dollars have been wasted just in the United States, just since the Inflation Reduction Act passed at under $300 billion. That is now beyond what Congress authorized, Jesse, on its way to being $1.2 trillion and possibly trillions. It's a self-sustaining thing of absolute waste of money, environmental justice, redistribution of wealth, restricting energy, going into these boondoggles of these companies that are set up, chiefly Democratic donors, chiefly just these fly-by-night firms who get this green subsidies and then go under, reform a new one, get more green subsidies, go under. We're seeing it with offshore wind. We're seeing it with solar. We're seeing it with EV battery companies. They're fly-by-night, but they cash in on all that money. This has been probably the greatest boondoggle in U.S. government history, at least the last, say, 30 years. And is no sign in slowing down or ending. Because even Donald Trump, when he was president, let's be honest, he didn't cut the EPA budget. He wasn't able to. The Republican Congress wouldn't go along with it. But he doesn't show any signs of paying any spending restraint on these kind of matters.
Why are electrical bills so high right now? Is it all this green crap?
Well, it's a combination of, yes. If you go back, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the climate hero back in California, 2005, the California Climate Bill. None of the provisions he signed back into law went into effect until long after he was out. And it took another decade. It takes a long time to really screw up an abundant fossil fuel, beautiful energy system, particularly with fracking, particularly with, the United States being the Saudi Arabia of coal and all of our natural resources. But since the invasion of Ukraine with all of the tightening, and since the Biden, Harris, or whatever you want to call it, administration's policies, they've started to have real teeth. That combined with constant conflict in the Middle East, constant rationing, constant restrictions on U.S. energy have led to where we are heading. And also constant money printing, inflationary cycle, the COVID lockdowns. It's a perfect storm to where energy prices are only set to go up unless we can reverse course on all of this. And this is what we're facing. And, you have, again, Donald Trump needs to really come up with a fiscal austerity plan, but it doesn't look likely that he's going to be able to stop the spending. But hopefully he won't pick someone like Jamie Dimon as Treasury Secretary. We need to rein in inflation. But at the core of inflation is all of these green policies, because if energy's higher, everything's higher. And that's what we've been saying. And none of this matters 1 ounce to the climate. You can't even affect global CO2. We could go down to zero today, as John Kerry has said multiple times, and it wouldn't affect global CO2. We are shooting ourselves for absolutely nothing.
Yeah, shooting ourselves to hand out money to all the Democrat allies. And it blows me away how many times, look, we've been talking for 5-6 minutes, Mark? How many times you have brought up a Republican as being one of the main authors of this insanity, whether it's George H.W. Bush, Arnold Schwarzenegger. The most frustrating thing in this to me is there aren't two different sides of it. There's one side that's really bad and the other side that's kind of bad.
That's true. And I go to these UN summits I'm going to Azerbaijan this November for the COP 29, the 29th. I've been to 20 out of the last 22 UN climate summits. At these summits, a coalition of conservative House Republicans will show up and they will tell the UN, we believe climate is in crisis, essentially, or there's a problem. But hey, you're going just a little too fast on starting to go after fossil fuels. Let's ease off a little bit. So a big part of the Republican Party is baked into this. Now, there's a lot of great Republican senators who fight this, from Rand Paul to Mike Lee to Senator Johnson from Wisconsin, and many, many others. But there's a whole contingent of Republicans, and this was Kevin McCarthy wing, who literally wanted to do more Green New Deal light type stuff, said climate was a problem. Republican Party is at a war with itself. If Nikki Haley had gotten the nomination, we would have been, not much different from a Biden-Harris administration. When it came at least to the climate policy, she would have been more pro-energy. But we have a problem. Young climate activists in the Republican Party want the Republicans to mimic the European model, where all the conservative candidates say, oh, yes, climate's a problem, but you guys are going too fast. Let's slow down a little bit. That's what Rishi Sunak, the prime minister who was thrown out of office, that was his approach. Oh, yes, net zero is a great goal, but let's slow it down a little bit. And it was just a weak message.
Yeah, to this day, in Texas, you can see Republicans running in Republican districts advertising on television, talking about how we can reduce carbon and get carbon down. Bunch of friggin' losers in this party.
We have to say hell no to net zero. It's anti-human, it's anti-science, it's anti-engineering. It makes absolutely no sense. All it does is empower the world. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., there's the best words to conclude on. He will not talk about climate in this campaign. He was red-pilled by COVID as well, because it has been hijacked by the World Economic Forum and the United Nations for totalitarian control of society. Add to that, of course, the World Health Organization. That's what people need to understand about the climate agenda. And I am getting a little frustrated with Trump-Vance. They're getting too caught up in a lot of minutia, whether, Kamala Harris is black, white. I understand some of these are important cultural, but they got to get back to the big issue of Harris and Walz are just cogs in this wheel of this machine of the uniparty and beyond. And that's what they need to go after. It doesn't really matter who the actual candidates are. It's important, I understand, but they need to go after the big picture more. And that's not what I've seen since the assassination attempt on Trump. I feel like they've been flailing.
Speaking of going after the big issue, Mark, talk to us about fracking. We're finally starting to hear some fracking. Of course, Dome said she's going to ban it. Now she's trying to back off that because she needs to win Pennsylvania. What does fracking mean for us in the country?
Well, I did a tour of the Pennsylvania fracking sites a few years ago, and I've testified to Pennsylvania EPA and the Pennsylvania House multiple times. My family is from Pennsylvania. And fracking has been one of the greatest advances in U.S. energy. And again, the last 30 years, a minimum. You can go back, and I detail this in my book, Green Fraud, back to 2005, and there was all this stuff about America energy, and it was all going to be based on coal. Well, they perfected fracking, which is horizontal drilling. Instead of drilling down and getting the oil, they drill sideways and they blow in water and steam, and they can extract oil and natural gas from areas that they didn't think was even possible 15, 20 years ago, and 25 years ago. And this has led to an incredible American energy renaissance, which, remember, we had more energy production than consumption, more energy exports and imports for the first time since Harry S. Truman was president in 1952 and Trump was there. And also we had the fastest nation reducing our carbon dioxide emission, if you care about that, because of fracking. So Kamala Harris has said openly she wants to ban it. She said it repeatedly back in 2019. And now her campaign just releases a statement that she no longer believes that, and she's all pro-fracking, as though that ended the issue. Walz, her vice presidential candidate, has signed 40 restrictions on energy, promoting green energy. He is one of the biggest promoters of this whole Green New Deal. And he's also, by the way, one of the lockdown governors, one of the very few governors of the Democrats who even forced nursing home patients back into the nursing home from the hospital with COVID, resulting in all their deaths. So there's a sort of connection with all of that, of course, the COVID lockdowns and the net zero crowd, because the goals really were the same: shut down the economy, control all human behavior, limit movement, limit economic growth, because that's what the climate movement had called with for years. Even skipping school. Greta had called for skipping school to fight climate. And hey, COVID lockdowns brought us that. So Camilla and Walz are two really far deep into this whole entire climate agenda. The catch is, of course, that Walz, her vice presidential candidate, comes across as that approachable, likable Midwestern guy. And that's a problem because he doesn't come across as the California climate radical like Harris does. And that's going to be something that they're going to have to deal with and redefine him.
No doubt. Mark, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. All right. Jordan Schachtel joins us in a moment. Did Joe Biden have a medical emergency and they covered it up? Hang on.
644, all my units at the airport, be advised, the motorcade is at Air Force One, so just hold your road closure until I tell you otherwise.
Control 302, I just want to let everybody know, great work out there. You know, we put that together ad hoc. Appreciate all the resources coming over. You guys did a fantastic job.
What am I listening to there? What happened on the 17th in Las Vegas, Nevada? Joining me now, my friend Jordan Schachtel. He's an independent journalist. You should go subscribe to his Substack, The Dossier. He always has juicy stuff on there. He's the first one I heard this reporting from. Jordan, that was a bunch of fuzzy audio from a police radio. I don't know what I'm listening to. What was happening there? What happened in Las Vegas on July 17th?
Yeah, so if you recall, your audience recalls, that was when at least that evening, the White House had announced that President Biden had canceled his schedule due to a positive COVID test. And then, of course, he would later go to Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. We would not see him for a week. He would give off the presidency or the nomination to Kamala Harris. So it preceded a lot of events that would follow to what we're dealing with today. What we found at the Dossier, interviewing lots and lots of police and security sources that took part in that day, was that no, the Secret Service informed them that the president had some type of medical emergency. We had not yet had the audio clips. So the other day, the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project got those clips via Freedom of Information Act request and released them to the public. And in those audio clips, you hear police dispatchers saying that Secret Service has informed them that they need to undergo a Code 3 response, which is an emergency with lights and sirens, and take the president to a level 1 trauma center. Certainly doesn't sound like COVID to me. And then in addition to that, you had additional broadcasts concluding that there was some type of emergency situation. They later rerouted the president to Air Force One, which has a full, medical emergency suite and physicians on board if necessary. And then the rest. President Biden would disappear into the night for several days after.
Yeah, and I remember the White House when they were kind of asked about this whole thing. Well, this is what they said.
Officers were racing to secure a hospital emergency room on July 17th. They were under the impression that President Biden was having a medical emergency. What was it?
He was not. As you know, the president, when we were in Vegas, tested positive for COVID. We let you all know, and then we flew back here. Outside of that, there was no medical emergency. People are still testing positive for COVID.
Okay, so obviously that's a big fat lie. Jordan, you're the one with all the secret sources at the Dossier. Do we have a theory on this thing? Has anybody whispered in your ear? Is he okay?
Well, he's a very old man and not doing well for his age, but I haven't been able to confirm the exact diagnosis. I'll leave that to his doctor, who's unfortunately a business partner of the Biden family, so I don't know if he's going to give you the answer. But, the White House and now candidate Kamala Harris have proven that they're willing to lie about Biden's cognitive condition, and they've been doing so for years on end. So we're going to need more insiders to give us answers about what's going on with the president. He intends on serving for several more months. He wants to last until Inauguration Day, which is kind of shocking how far gone he is. I was reviewing his schedule over the past week. He's spent more than half of it on vacation. He's going on vacation again on Friday. He does maybe one public event every few days and doesn't speak. So it's just so bizarre what's going on now. And we have to kind of just go back to pretending that he's a sentient person.
Yeah, no, at least there's nothing going on in the world. It's not like Iran is making threats against us daily. And Ukraine has officially launched an offensive into Russian territory. No big deal. It's not like we need a president.
Yeah, it's wild. And it certainly doesn't seem like Kamala Harris is the commander-in-chief either. So it leads us to this question, who's making those calls to send our aircraft carriers into the Mediterranean, into the Persian Gulf. I really have no idea. I wish the corporate media was interested in this. They have big budgets and foreign correspondents. And, you saw yesterday, I don't know if you caught it, but this Washington Post reporter in the White House presser asked if, they were concerned about Elon Musk and Trump talking, with this misinformation that they're about to spread, and what can they do about it? That's not only his ideology, it's shared throughout the entire White House press corps. So they're all on one team. They all move as one unit, and they're all on the team of, on the Biden administration's team. So, we're just not going to get answers from these people, but there's just so many basic questions about who's in charge of our republic that I love to get answers to.
Yeah, I would love it too. So I saw Ron DeSantis, Heavy D, came out the other day, said something that I've been kind of saying publicly as well about Tim Walz. Jordan, I'm not so sure he's going to last. That's what DeSantis said as the VP for Harris. The VP is not allowed to drag down the ticket. They're supposed to help the ticket, even if it's in small ways. This stolen valor stuff's not going away. It's getting worse, isn't it?
It's incredible what, the Minnesota GOP news people have been all over this for a couple decades. Unfortunately, none of this stuff reached a national level. And then, the liberal, Democrat, communist, progressives, whatever you want to call them, who are vetting Tim Walz, they don't really, I don't think that there's any veterans in the room. So they don't really care about this stuff. But then suddenly, this man becomes a national figure. And then over, a 20-year period since he left the National Guard, we find that Tim Walz has this amazing ability to, allude to this idea that he was a combat veteran without announcing it directly. I mean, he has done it a few times, but usually he's pretty good at saying, when I came back and my kids were older, or, he has a variety of messaging, rhetoric, tactics that he uses to insinuate that he's been deployed either to Afghanistan or Iraq. The reality is that, we honor everyone's service who served this country, but we're, disappointed that he continues to lie, flat out lie about his service. And, there should be a sacred pedestal for people who especially are combat veterans of war who answered the call. And what we find is that Tim Walz did the opposite, and then claimed still that, he kind of like served in combat, or, that he commanded troops into battle. All these ridiculous things that he said over the years are really catching up to him. But I don't think that they'll pull him off the ticket, because it would just be such bad messaging. I think they're stuck with him.
Yeah, they might be. He's a gutless coward and a liar. Jordan, thank you, brother. Talk soon. All right. We have Light in the Mood. Next. All right, it's time to lighten the mood. I still having trouble processing when I asked Scott Presler what the best thing he ate at the fair, and he said taffy. In fact, I was just talking to producer Matt about it before this segment. I can't wrap my mind around that. There have to be sandwiches at these fairs and pierogies. Matt said they would have pierogies. I do like a good pierogi. Anyway, let's lighten the mood, and let's mock not only Stephen Colbert, Caitlin Collins, CNN. Colbert tried to have a serious moment. The audience thought it was a joke. Pretty revealing, no? People are catching on. I'll see you tomorrow. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.